It made me smile for a thumbnail. Am I live? How do I even? I've never used this feature before. I feel odd. I've never ever used this feature before. Okay, let me share the video. Give me a few minutes if you show up. I'm not talking now because I was probably supposed to do this. I did this all wrong. What did I just type? I can't type. Yeah. Boom. Oh my God, look at that thumbnail. That is so frightening. How did I do that to myself? Why did I do that to myself? New hold potentially inappropriate messages for review. Chat messages will be flagged in chat for you to moderate, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, who cares? Is there anybody here? It says 2 watching now. Hello. I didn't catch all of Rob's vid, his live broadcast. I caught up to it late, but essentially it seems like he was talking about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and the what up, Jeremy? And the insight skill. All right. I don't know. I'm just gonna go. I don't know where to begin. I'm just gonna go. Hit the ground running. Even though I started a little while ago, hitting the ground running. So, insight. Is it the lie detection skill? Personally, I don't think so. I think and I feel that insight is just another clue. Right? If you feel, Rob said that depending on the voice you use, people can tell if you're lying or if the character is lying. The NPCs are not being truthful. And once that happens, you've already lost. At least that's what I believe he was getting at, just boiling what I saw down as fast as possible, which I really don't think is entirely accurate. Like I said in the chat for his video, I really enjoy playing with the perceptions of players rather than their characters, because meta is such a thing. Meta, players being metagameful or whatever. Players metagaming during a session is such an enormous problem that if you're running a session where you really don't want that, you want some genuine role play, and one, you have the type of players that don't genuinely role play, or two, you have players that role play, playing with their perceptions as people and as gamers is even better for how they respond during that role play in some instances. It's, of course, doesn't resolve all questions, but like, I think insight is more or less the ability to tell if the character or if someone is being truthful, and honesty isn't always in truth. Like, you can be honest and still be withholding the truth in its entirety. What did he say? Oh, he made a mention of someone stealing ale. And if you find a dwarf in the back of the tavern and in a back alley, he's, "Are you stealing ale?" And the dwarf is like, no. Then you've already got the guy who's stealing ale. They're gonna catch him. Boom, done. It's over with. And I mentioned how, players back or player an NPC's background and life experiences can play into that. I don't have a problem really going there with NPCs because I research a lot of different social groups. I've known tons of people from vastly different social groups, and I draw on that. I do what any improv actor would do, or anybody in improv theater is draw on life experience. Makes it a lot easier. So, say you run into a dwarf back alley behind the tavern, right? And he's like, "No, I didn't steal any ale." You can use that to play with a player's perception. Yeah, it's a bit shifty. Maybe he's like, "No, I didn't steal no ale. What's wrong with you? Who are you? Why are you coming to me?" Make him get a little defensive, right? And those can come from an entirely different place. Maybe the dwarf grew up in a different city, and in that different city, they were racist against dwarves, and anytime anything ever went wrong, they come hunting for the dwarves. Always the dwarves' problem, or maybe in the city where ale is being stolen, dwarves are the stereotypical dwarves, right? The stereotype that players see dwarves as being those, "Hey, we're the Scottish drinker guys," right? Using that stereotype, which is a meta stereotype in game, and having that dwarf's life experience be part of that meta stereotype, have their life experience be affected by that to the point where, the dwarf is going to get defensive. What? Because I'm a dwarf, I got to be stealing ale? Am I a drunkard? You trying to say I'm a drunkard because I'm a dwarf? I don't like people like you, right? Catch an attitude. Sometimes that catches people on the back foot, like, "Ooh, whoa, my bad." Or, they double down on their convictions and say, "Well, now we know he stole the ale." The entire time, he may not have stolen the ale. It's this idea. Rob ended it. Well, should it all be down to no? It shouldn't be all down to a roll. All skills, all of them, are just tools. They are not. This is not a video game. When we're playing tabletop games, we're not playing video games. A video game, you do a lie detection, boom, it'll tell you if it's successful or whatever, and 100% for sure, because role-playing video games are not true role-playing games. They're simply games that are heavily themed after role-playing games, right? But like, take Baldur's Gate. Baldur's Gate, great game. It's still a video game. It's not a tabletop role-playing game. So you are way more likely to know whether you succeed or fail. Okay, this is the lie detection. He's lying. I know, but that's a video game. When you're playing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, 3rd edition, 4th edition, 13th Age, Iron Kingdoms, all of that stuff, it's much more about I believe that there is a huge scope to tabletop role-playing games, and they shouldn't be looked at in the same way as a video game. All right, you can't just roll a skill and expect to get everything you wanted. The same thing with deception. Deception. I think deception as a skill. All right, this is more about the GM and how a GM runs their tables. Right. I think anytime a role is needed is to resolve a disagreement. That's it. It's to resolve a disagreement between the game master, dungeon master, and the players. Whenever there's a disagreement in the possible desired resolution, right? If I got a guy that's lying, and you're role playing that you understand or have discovered that he's lying. You role play with your buddies. You know, he mentioned about an hour ago that he had 4 kids and now he has 3. You know, he's just not an honest person. I really wouldn't believe anything he says. Well, then maybe I might not even make you make a roll. You're being perceptive. You're role playing. Maybe I want you to discover. The intention is for you to discover this guy's lying. So why, when you have all the tools available to you that you've role played, why leave that up to chance if there's not a disagreement? You know, if there's this little feeble little guy, I'm going to whip your ass. And you go, no, you're not. And you slap him and you knock him out. Then you slap him and you knock him out. Why relegate it to an attack roll, right? Any and all roles exist to arbitrate a disagreement, in my opinion. What about deception skill? Nicholas, what up, Nick? Nicholas, jacket. So if a player asks to roll insight, you'll deny it? No, I won't. I won't deny any roll. If they get nothing from it, they get nothing from it. Like, it's really that easy. Like, I don't need, like, Rob, I don't have my dice next to me. Rob was mentioning about, you know, they see you rolling a deception roll. It already gives it away. I roll randomly just for no reason, just so people could see me rolling. I may roll for things that are completely separate from the situation, preparing some numerical values for where it looks like things are going, to keep things away from that. Like, well, I wanted to roll an insight check and he just rolled a d20. That means he's rolling a deception. No, you know, if someone's being untruthful, right? You roll an insight check. Well, you can tell he's being honest. Right? You can tell he's being honest, or you can tell he's being dishonest. That's just a piece of information. You know, I often create a situation, and when I will require a roll, I'll just tell my players, tell me what you want to roll, and if successful, depending on the skill rolled, that will color the information that you gained. Right? Insight might be about linguistic battles. Let me read the rest of this. To me, it sounds like you aren't a fan of either of the skills. I like to treat social situations as encounters, linguistic battles. Yeah. I'm not. I use the tools given to me as best as I can. Right. In 5th edition, the way skills work, you succeed at something or you fail at something. Right. Insight. Okay, insight is like the lie detection skill, right? You can tell if somebody's being honest or somebody's being dishonest. It doesn't necessarily mean that you get all the information that you're going to get. Nicholas says, sometimes I feel like insight is expected to be much more powerful than it really is. That might be where the problem is. Yeah, I think the same is true for any and everything about 5th edition. Every last thing in 5th edition is expected to be way more powerful than it actually is. Everything. You get into a fight, somebody hits your armor, well, it deflects. It's like, oh, how often do you see that? Right? Somebody has an athletic skill, they don't struggle. They don't. I'm jaded. Let me just preface all this by saying I'm jaded as all. I've been playing for a very long time with a lot of different types of personalities, and I find that people who really engage in the same types of mixture of metagaming and role playing as I enjoy are few and far between in the grand scheme of things. Right? Let me just preface that. But when people roll athletics, they are Olympians in their athletics. It doesn't even matter if they, succeeded by a point or rolled a natural 20. It doesn't matter. They are automatic Olympians, right? More often than not, people fail to role play the struggle of a situation. They're badasses, or they're angry at you because you didn't let them be the badasses they wanted to be, right? So with insight is about detecting a lie. Someone can lie, someone can be dishonest because they're trying to hide something else other than what you're asking for. Right? It may relate to it. Someone in the instance with the dwarf and the stolen ale, the dwarf, you may roll your insight check, you may succeed, right? You may roll a natural 20, so you're like, if I didn't succeed, there's no way we can ever succeed, right? You get that feeling, and you feel the dwarf is being dishonest. The dwarf is deflecting. The dwarf is actively deflecting. You see signs, the micro expressions, the behavioral patterns, the body language, the inflections in the voice are telling you that the dwarf's words are being dishonest, that the dwarf is deflecting. The intention for why the dwarf is deflecting or being dishonest cannot be automatically revealed. It's a role-playing game. Okay, fine. There's magic. But if you had give me the truth spell, that's different than just a skill, an insight skill. Somebody's telling the truth. Are you the person that did this? The spell says, no, he's not. And then right? Jeremy says maybe it should be a passive skill like AC or passive perception. Any skill can be a passive skill, any and all. I find that most people who play games that like rolling dice like to roll dice. So why'd you be like, well, no, you're not going to roll the dice. Right. It just depends on I think a passive DC is more fun. Right. But it doesn't change the fact that you don't like lie detector tests. We have lie detector tests in the modern world. Lie detector tests actually don't detect lies. They don't. They measure how agitated a person gets in accordance with certain questions. Right? That's why there are methods to fooling a lie detector test. Reading body language, human lie detectors. Message retracted. Here goes that censor stuff again. How do I see what you typed to see if it is a thing or not? I don't know how to do this. Can I? No, I just wanted to see what you typed. Yeah, it's this message retracted. I don't know what that's about. But yeah, like I'm saying, discovering the intention behind a lie has nothing to do with discovering a lie, right? Oh, you accidentally removed it? Okay. Let's see if I can find an example of that instance. The dwarf who's being dishonest, right? Your insight has revealed to you that your interaction with this dwarf has revealed that the dwarf is being deceitful. The deception check is involved. The dwarf is being deceitful, right? And let's go with the assumption that the dwarf did not steal the ale, right? And the assumption that the dwarf's life experiences is that of being stereotyped as a drunkard, as a lower class citizen in this instance. So the dwarf is being deceitful. Now, behind the scenes, the dwarf can be the reason for the dwarf's deceit is not guilt, but an attempt to circumvent what comes next, right? The dwarf assumes, because of their life experience, that anyone who is not a dwarf is automatically going to assume that he stole the ale. This doesn't look good for him. So the dwarf is deflecting. The dwarf is trying to change subjects. The dwarf is being deceitful, not because they stole, not because they stole this ale, but because they know that they're going to be locked up regardless. And it doesn't look good for them. Maybe they didn't steal the ale, but maybe this dwarf actually has a human lover, right? Let's throw some Romeo and Juliet. He's going out with a Capulet or something, right? Just for an example. And that's why, he came out her window, went through the back alley, and is trying not to be seen. And he's like, holy cow, I'm in a bad situation. Why am I in this back alley? Can't reveal that he's getting down and dirty with a human because her family would, try to kill him or disown her, ruin her life or whatever. He doesn't want to bring that sort of heat down on her. So he's not being honest as to why he's there. Right? So you get, depending upon the questions, if you just, did you steal the ale? He's going to react. What ale? Why are you trying to say I steal it? I'm stealing ale. What, because I'm a dwarf? You see a dwarf, you think drunkard right away? That's sadly going to be like, I'm going to roll an insight check. Insight to what? Right? If somebody tells me they want to roll a skill, I ask towards what end? As a GM, I can't automatically assume towards one end. It's the player's responsibility to inform me why their character is doing this. If they just want to roll an insight check, okay, you rolled an insight check. I rolled a 20-something. Okay. He's being honest in how upset he is that you asked him the question. Peace out, Jeremy. More chatting stuff. Nicholas Jacket, what do you think about the idea of using insight check to lie to the players, give them false info? No. I don't worry about that. I think, me personally, I feel that there are more than enough tools given to misdirect a player without having to actually lie and use their tools against them. Rob was saying when he was talking on his video about Mike Coletta and how he feels Mike Coletta likes to take the power away from the players. Right. In systems like Dungeons and Dragons, it gives a stupid amount of power to the players. But that's the system you chose to play. So why rip that away from them? Why use something like, you can be deceitful in a game and just, you don't have to give them false info. You don't have to give them a lie and say, it's the truth. It all depends on how they ask their questions. Right? In the same instance with the dwarf, a player can ask, did you steal the ale? No. you know. Which I mean, there's a whole huge problem to that too. It's like you find someone in this back alley, right? Depending upon the city that you're in or the town, if this is a fantasy game and you're hell, even in the Tudor era, Victorian era, uh, you know, the streets were tight, man. They were tight. Everything was like a back alley, you know. But you find this individual who happens to be a dwarf in a curious and somewhat incriminating situation. You ask him, "Did you steal the ale?" All right. Now you, as the game master, know the dwarf didn't steal the ale. And you're asking, should insight be used to deliver false info? I would respond no. Because if you're playing with the perceptions of your players, they'll gather and use whatever it is you give them to whatever end they see that they're trying to achieve, right? You could just have the dwarf have an attitude. What? Because I'm a dwarf, I got to steal liquor? They don't have to answer yes or no. And if you have the type of players that are, I'm going to pull my dagger and throw it to his, press it against his throat. Well, if your dwarf is a fighter, that's not going to happen. You roll initiative. And if they kill the dwarf, that's murder. If they weren't cleared to murder someone or have any proof as to why that dwarf was killed, then they have a different set of situations. Now they've got to deal with the actual town guard. You were hired to find if liquor was being stolen, but there's no evidence as to this dwarf stealing liquor, right? Or the cops say, yeah, he's a fucking dwarf, he probably stole it. Then the dwarven community in that same city might have a reason to start organizing and create some sort of racial uprising, right? There's a wealth of things that you can do to naturally progress these situations. Like me, I love sandboxes. I never have as much fun as when I'm in a sandbox. I never have as much fun running a games as I do when in a set. You're in a venue playing this thing that is limited only really by your imagination. So why, put the cuffs on? So what if players, Nicholas asks, what if a player uses insight, but you think a creature being targeted could see that and lie on purpose? What if, okay, I'm not. What if a player uses insight, but you think the creature being targeted could see that and lie on purpose? I mean, that all depends on when you ask your player, okay, you're using insight, why and how? How is the player using insight? What are you looking for? I'm looking to see if he's lying. What? If you're just looking at him, listening to him, how would the NPC recognize that? And why would your NPC, you know what I'm saying? Like that all depends on the NPC. Okay, for example, I had a campaign that was online, but it wasn't broadcast, where there was this bandit who really isn't a big deal. He's not a villain, right? He's really just an asshole bandit. And he was made into this villain, this object of intense hatred because of a few small things. There was the fact that he was a fast talker, so practically everything he said had a bit of bullshit on top, right? He couldn't help but embellish the truth, let alone just tell straight out lies. And there was a situation where he wanted to get a little bit of payback against one of the players. So in the mind of my NPC, I hatched this incredibly outrageous and outlandish plan that I swore up, right, left, down, freaking center would never, ever work. However, because of the player's perception, because of the player's emotional response, the plan actually worked, right? And in many instances, when trying to detect this bandit's lies, they would just see him as being truthful because he was telling the truth. He just sounded like he was lying because everything was a bit embellished. You know, so me playing it out was what? Oh, yeah, all right. I'm being interrupted. Me playing out this bandit triggered the player's emotional response. It was just a person they didn't like, that they refused to like, and they just wanted to destroy every opportunity. But the situation did not allow the player to destroy the bandit without the player looking like their character was a villain. The entire time, the player's character was on this downward descent into appearing evil, you know, and that was the entire plan, was to do that. And it really only took the entire plan hinged on the player not taking a step back to just pause and observe the situation and to empathize with how that situation appeared and looked, which I thought that's why it was outlandish. I mean, no one is going to play right into this, and they did. You know, that's what I mean about playing with players' perceptions rather than the characters' perceptions, right? Like goblins. I love using goblins. I love using goblins with intellect and social structure because so many people see, oh, it's a goblin. We're killing them until we hit level 2, you know, type of enemy, right? Or rats, giant rats. I created a in my Saturday morning tabletop RPG. There's a bad guy known as the Rat Collector, and you know, spoiler alert, he transforms himself into a rat swarm, and he also psychically commands other rats, right? So these are rats that are actually intelligent. So, you know, you're hired to kill a bunch of giant rats. Well, they're doing smart things. They're not just like running up and dying and that's it, you know. Maybe you're led by one giant rat into a room, right? And then this from the ceiling above rains down a rat swarm. Now you're inundated with giant rats getting bit all over the place, catching diseases and whatnot. It was obviously a trap, but how could a rat lay a trap? Right? Like, it's about playing with the kind of things people expect and giving them what's unexpected, right? Like, go into a game expecting the unexpected, and you'll never be unprepared. You know, you'll learn to think. I love thinking on my feet. I love being pressed to think on my feet, and I thoroughly enjoy that challenge. And that's how I run games. So, insight. I'm going ranting. See me ranting? Going back to insight. Insight is just a skill. It's only there to say if a person is lying. It's not, I rolled an insight check. Okay, GM, now you have to unfurl the entirety of the evildoer's nefarious plan before me because I rolled successful on my insight check. No! That's not how it is. That's not how it goes. You just find out if they're being deceitful or not. Insight is the antithesis to deception. Back in the days, they didn't have insight, they had sense motive, right? And it does not exist to explicitly detail intention, right? If you want to take it to the socio-political sphere today, politics today, we've got this whole gay marriage thing or the women's rights stuff, and there are people who are just horrendous and people with valid opinions, but you can never truly sense the motive of what's going on, right? When you police language to a certain degree, right? It's been said many times. You're essentially creating a roadmap for, bigoted people to learn how to be bigots without ever being perceived as bigots. So despite the language used, there is differing intentions. How do you decipher those intentions? And the method for deciphering this intention is a mixture of understanding if that person is being truthful or not, the context of the situation, and several other clues, about who this person is, how do they live their life, what information do you have? Do you have more than just this one intentional meeting? It's more than just a yes or no. Tabletop gaming is not about true or false. It's just not. Are you lying? Yes, I'm lying. Why are you lying? Does your skill tell you that? No. And I think I've been ranting far too long about this. But skills, insight is a lie detection skill. It is. Detecting a lie has nothing to do with understanding intention or even discovering the truth. Okay, wait, let me rephrase that. Detecting a single lie cannot uncover a whole truth, only a window into that truth. You have to uncover all the lies to find out what the whole truth is. So a single roll can't do that. It has to be role play, maybe a roll, and maybe more than just the insight roll. Acrobatics. Somebody said, you know what? I want to see why this dwarf is in this back alley. Could he have stolen this stuff? This ale. And you look at your acrobatics. I want to roll acrobatics. Right? Let's say the GM asks me, what skill do I want to use and why? And what am I looking for? I would say I want to use my acrobatics to take a lay of the land and see if, based on my skill, do I think this dwarf could have found a way to, free running or whatever, parkour, could have parkoured out of this alleyway. And that's it. Like, that's it. I'd be fine with just that. I'd discover whether or not that's the case, and then I'd move on to another question, right? Insight. You want to know about insight? Watch a detective show. Even though they're not 100% like accurate and the laws there are questionable, just watch anything that is about being a detective. Watch Perot. Why did I think of Perot? I don't know if you guys remember that old show. Perot, the guy with the mustache and the starch collar. Oh, any watch Psych. You want to watch a detective show? Watch Psych, right? Or Law and Order. They put pieces to a puzzle together. They can find a truth. They can discover a fact, and a fact is a clue, right? A fact is evidence. They can discover evidence, but discovering evidence does not inherently, or discovering a single piece of evidence does not inherently unveil a situation. You have to discover several pieces of evidence, use what you know, make a few assumptions to bring you closer to the truth, right? You may be right, you may be wrong, you may be spot on, you may be miles away, but insight is like a part of discovering social evidence to something. And that's just going to be it. I'm going to go now. I'm going to go because I've been doing this too long. Bye.